Hello and welcome to a very special podcast series. This is the E.R.S.I Brain Project podcast. I'm your host, Coach Single, and today joining us is Dr. David Greenberg, known to some as Dr. Dave. How you doing today, good Dr. Dave?
Any better, and I couldn't stand it. Thank you. How are you? I'm just thrilled to be here.
Well, hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm good to go, and I really, I'm happy that you have a moment to speak to us. I know that you are one of the founders of the E.R.S.I Brain Project, and before I get into massaging the topic, let those who may not know about Dr. Dave, how you became Dr. Dave.
Oh, well, I was born. No, that's a little too far back. Um, but having said that, growing up, so my dad was a doctor for many years, almost 60 years,
Okay.
and one of the things that he was involved in was boxing.
Okay.
And yeah, he was actually in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So one of the things that I got to see, which sort of led me into, um, I played a lot of sports, and then I knew a lot about boxing, and I knew a lot about dealing with athletes, and particularly with boxers. The idea of head trauma and so on. That sort of got, and then dealing with the Toronto Argonauts, a football team that I'm the doctor for.
Yes.
That sort of got me interested in concussion and the fact that there wasn't really enough being done about concussion in a way that was satisfying to most people. There was really nothing being done about it at all. So that was one direction that I came from. Um, this in terms of the E.R.S.I. The other side was the fact that over the course of years, and particularly over the course of the last year or so,
Yes.
it's become apparent that the brain trauma part, non-physical brain trauma part, is becoming a much bigger issue, affecting many more people. It's a little bit ripples in the water. So if somebody is exposed to something, it's not just them, but it's the people around them, their coworkers, their families, their kids. So it became a much bigger deal. And I think the penny kind of dropped at a concussion conference that I was at. I wish I could remember which one it was, where it started to become apparent to me that the science was now supporting the fact that the injury that people have in a traumatic event, actually your brain can't tell the difference between that and a concussion, in the sense that the same brain networks, the same brain cells
Yes.
that talk to each other are impacted almost exactly the same way, whether you get hit in the head or whether you're exposed to some horrible incident. So the idea was that if we merge these two things, between the concussions and the idea of these event-related issues, that we could help a lot more people by dealing with effectively the same brain injury.
And this is where you and Howard came together to create the project?
Correct, because what happened was actually, um, Howard had a special interest in brain injury and in physical brain injury as well.
Yes.
And that was how that started. And then over the course of time, we had more exposure to first responders and more exposure to people that were frontline people who were being injured, psychologically more so than physically. And then the whole thing sort of came together from there.
All right. Now, you made mention about the science behind event-related stress injury. So can you give us a bit more of that just for the listeners who are...
Oh, with pleasure.
Yes.
So one of the things that happened was, it was a company that I was working with when Howard and I first started looking at this, that was actually looking at brain trauma from what they call a brain network perspective.
Okay.
So as everybody's watching knows, your brain is just this big clump of really highly specialized cells. Okay. One of the things that I think most people that are watching don't realize is that your brain cells talk to each other by chemistry, not by electricity.
Okay.
And when if you think about like what it takes for me to put together a sentence, okay, a lot of things have to be coordinated for that to happen, right? I have to control my breathing, I have to control my tongue, I have to control my mouth and my lips, and I also have to be able to think of what I want to say, make it relevant to what is being asked,
Right.
and then come up with an answer. That's a lot of stuff to be coordinated, right?
Right.
So if you think about it, that's not like one little cell here, one little cell there. There's a whole lot of cells that work together in a network to create that happening. With brain injuries, there are certain networks that we know get disrupted by injury. The networks that get disrupted by physical injury, the concussion, are oftentimes very similar or the same networks as the ones that get disrupted by event-related injury.
Yes.
And as a result, we can sort of manage them in similar ways to the extent that we understand. And again, the brain is like, like people think the moon's a mystery, right? Like our brains, we still know like virtually nothing about them relative to what we could know, but we know way, way, way more than we used to.
Yes.
And the idea is that now we're starting to understand that the event-related stuff and the concussion-related stuff are in fact causing a similar injury. Hence, we can approach them under the same umbrella.
Now, the event-related stress injury brain project, there are a number of services that can be provided to individuals who are suffering from stress and anxiety. Could you touch on that, please, for us, Dr. Dave?
Well, as it stands right now, the brain project is still in it. The E.R.S.I. brain project is still in its infancy.
Okay. So
we're just building out the network now, or starting to build the network now. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to is I think we're going to have the opportunity to look at both paths. So people will come in the door because they've got a brain injury.
Right.
Okay. Whether or not that's a physical injury or an event-related injury specifically, that would be something that would be determined at that time.
Yes.
And then what we'll do is we'll look at the whole sort of picture of what's going on and offer people the best therapy that we can, whether it's talking therapy, whether it's physical therapy, whether it's supplements, where supplements have been proven to be of use,
yes,
whether it's antidepressants, whether it's pain medication. The reality of it is that, one of the things I talk about is that headaches is headaches.
Yeah.
Right? So if somebody comes in, they got a headache. Well, there's nothing magical about having a headache from having been involved in a traumatic event at work versus getting hit in the head while you're, when you fall off a ladder.
Right.
Right? At the end of the day, you manage the headache. If somebody comes in and they've had a triggering event that's caused them to become depressed, like, for example, the easy one that everybody here can relate to these days is that somebody's either lost their job because of the current conditions, or that they've been involved in something where they've seen something that they can't get out of their head. And that then leads us to be able to make a diagnosis of clinical depression. Well, there's lots of therapy we can do, but ultimately we have to manage the depression. Similarly, if you take a 15-year-old girl who's a soccer player,
yes,
and she gets a soccer ball to the head and gets concussed, okay? So now, not only she got headaches, but she's not able to play anymore, right? Which is a tremendous blow to her identity, right? Because she was a soccer player. She's lost her friend group because all her friends are on her team.
So here's a ripple effect.
Correct. She can't communicate with them because she's not allowed to spend a lot of time on screens. She can't go to school because, again, the noise and the lights and the screens are too much for her. So is it reasonable that she's going to become depressed? Absolutely. Is her depression any different in terms of the way we approach it than the person that we spoke of earlier? Not really, not from a pharmacological perspective.
Right.
On the therapy side, absolutely. But so anyway, just the idea that we look after people individually, but they have enough in common that we can look after them as a group as well.
Well, you've touched on a very, I would say, current issue, because there's a number of, youngsters or children who are now feeling the ripple effect of, being at home for XYZ months. And Dr. Dave, we're going to take a quick break, but then I want to restart with that, the children being, again, in a lockdown, and how we now have to alter our whole approach when dealing, with children and now stress and now amplified anxiety. So we're going to take a quick break.
I got 3 of them at home, so I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay, wonderful. We'll be right back. Thank you, Doctor.
Hey everybody, welcome to Conversations in Aurora with Neighbor. My name's Sean, I'm your host. I'm really excited to dive deep into our community, getting on local musicians, business owners, entrepreneurs, non-for-profits, event organizers, everyone in our community, all of our neighbors getting together for one big conversation to talk about what's going on in our community and what we can do to make it better. So stay tuned, we're gonna have weekly episodes and I can't wait to chat with you.
Once again, we are here, and this is a very special podcast series. Dr. Dave is with us. Dr. Dave, you mentioned before our break 3 children at home. Uh, Give us some of your optics on what's been happening. We've been in a lockdown situation. What's going on?
Well, let me just say this. I don't want to overstate my situation,
Okay.
Because by the grace of God, only one of them's still in school.
Okay.
And the two other ones are a little older. And again, by the grace of God, I've got a big enough house that I could actually not see them for a whole day and it wouldn't be so hard, right? But I think of parents who have kids in grade school,
Yes,
who are in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? Trying to work online, a partner that's trying to work online and trying to do their kids' schooling while they're doing that. It ain't just the kids,
right?
It's the parents are really, really, really struggling right now. And, parents do what parents do, which is they try and create the best situation for their kids.
Yes.
Right? Parents come last. Okay? So by the time you get somebody who's supposed to be cooking and cleaning and working and homeschooling their kids, that's a lot of stuff to deal with. The kids, surprisingly, so far in my practice, seem to be pretty resilient. Like they seem to be doing okay, but I think that's as much a reflection of them being kids as it is what an extraordinary job the parents are doing at maintaining some semblance of normalcy in their lives. But the toll that it's taking on the parents is not small. And this is why people need to be aware of things like this as well.
Yes. And just for those who are, first-time listeners, just give them a bit of your background and your accolades so that when we say Dr. Dave.
Accolades, I don't know. I've been a doctor for almost 30 years now. And I have a very general practice. I always joke it's womb to tomb care. And and I've done some sports stuff. I think that the family stuff is really interesting. So I was on a show that some of the listeners may remember called The Mom Show. And I was the doctor on that for 5 years. And then I had my own show for a couple of years called Doctor in the House.
Okay.
And then I was the resident GP on City Line for 8 years.
Okay.
And so we spent a lot of time talking about stuff like this.
Yes.
Like the whole, so as I think there isn't anybody listening to this wouldn't know this.
Right.
You can't have one person in a family unit have problems without that ripple effect.
Right. It's true.
Right? If one person ain't happy, nobody's happy.
It's very true.
And so while you want to focus on the one person who's having the problem, because clearly fixing their problem to the best degree that you can will alleviate all the pressure on the other people, you can't ignore the fact that the other people, while this is going on, are suffering as well, and they also need your support. So I've gotten a whole bunch of calls from parents, right, who tell me about how hard their kids are having it, which I totally get, but how hard it's making it for them on top of that. And that is a real thing, and it's really important to be cognizant of that.
So again, you've touched on a wonderful nerve because now we're speaking about children's physical and mental wellness. Now, I myself am a coach, and I work with athletes from I would say senior kindergarten up into grade 9. That's my sweet spot. And I myself have seen the change in athletes' focus over the last, 12, 14 months. So can you give us some insight on, what or how we can attempt to grasp a more balance when it comes to, or regain of balance for these children and their physical and mental health?
It's a great question. And you know this as a coach and an athlete, right? That the year is broken down into seasons, right? And there's basically 3 seasons. There's preseason, season, and off-season.
Yep.
Okay? And off-season is a time to build, right? Preseason is time to get ready to compete, and season is a time to compete as hard as you can.
Right.
And okay.
To showcase.
Correct.
Yes.
In the middle of the season, right, what you need to do a lot of that most people don't realize that pro athletes do is they need to do a lot of rest They need to get proper sleep, they need to eat properly, and they need to be able to maintain their focus on what they're doing so that they can perform optimally. But there are times of the year when that's all you can do.
Yes.
Okay? You're not trying to gain strength, you're not trying to build during the middle of the season. You're just hanging on the best you can until the season's over. That's where we are right now. We are mid-season, okay? The problem is when you've got a season in your world, it's defined. You've got opening day and you got the playoffs,
Right.
okay? Is this ever going to end? I know it's going to end, but you know that there's a whole lot of people watching this right now that are saying to themselves, is this really ever going to end?
Right.
So the problem is we're in survival mode right now, not thrive mode. We're not in build mode. We're in just hang on the best you can mode until we can get back some semblance of normalcy. We got a couple of things coming up that are going to be really, really helpful. Well, we got a vaccine, hopefully. Although by the time young healthy people get this, that's going to be quite a ways away.
Right.
But we got nice weather coming.
Yes.
And the caseload is going down.
Yes.
So getting kids back outside, right? Keeping them appropriately socially distanced, but getting them active again is going to make a massive, massive, massive impact on the whole of their lives.
Yes.
Right? It's going to help with their mental health. It's going to help with their focus in school. It's going to help with their appetite and their, managing their eating. It's going to help a ton with their sleeping. So there is hope. It's coming. But right now, the most important thing is do the best you can with what you got and don't beat yourself up for what you're not doing because there's just nothing you can do sometimes. Like we're just in the middle of that survive mode, not thrive mode. When the thrive mode comes back, jump on it.
Amazing. And the other element that I wanted to mention to that is that once the athlete or the child is able to, again, feel that element of being a child, running around and playing, and again, I'm not a doctor, but the endorphins are now being released on another level.
I think that's fair. And I think the other thing is, and this is the part that's going to be hard, right, is that kids, if you look at this last year as the percentage of a kid's life, right, it's a way bigger percentage of their lives than it is of our lives, right?
It is.
So at the end of the day, what you have to try and explain to your kids, show your kids, because one thing that every parent who's watching this knows is your kids don't listen to you, they watch you.
Right.
Okay? So leading by example is the very best thing you can do. But I think reinforcing the fact that what we're dealing with now is not the new normal. Okay? So my son, who's in grade 12,
yes,
he started working out again this week, which is great, but, spent weeks and weeks and weeks on a couch, either in school, playing Madden, or texting with his friends, right? And a lot of these kids, right, we've created now this scenario where sitting on your butt in your house on a computer is okay.
Right.
And getting back to the point where no, it's not okay. I mean, it's okay some of the time, but we got to get you outside. We got to get you active. We got to get you moving again. And unfortunately, for some parents, unfortunately for others, you got to lead by example. You got to get them out there and you got to show them how it's done, or at least open the door and let them go and run around a little bit.
Yes, no, most certainly. It's going to be interesting to see just how that transition now happens from, like you made mention, I was able to sit on a couch for XYZ hours weekly, if not monthly. And now, as a parent or a guardian, now it's to say, okay, well, that's enough of that. Now I need you out. So that's also going to be a moment of transition for parenting.
Correct. And a challenge. Absolutely a challenge.
Yeah, it's because, when you think of just once upon a time, it's turn off the TV and go outside and okay, I'm going to go. But then you get, you're in a lockdown for 12, 14 months.
Yeah.
So
it's get back in the house and turn on the TV.
Right. So your whole demeanor, your whole program has literally been shifted. And, I find with the athletes that I'm coaching, my heart goes out to them. I can't imagine being a 7, an 8, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, even a teen or a tween. because you're used to that moment of, embracing your, we'll say, childhood, your youthfulness.
Right.
And now
Right.
that's just been totally shifted. So I say that to say it's amazing that the E.R.S.I Brain Project, it's saying, hey, wait a minute, there's something here, and here are ways to aid in developing or finding your happy place.
Right. Or just to even know, right?
Right.
Like, one of the that you're not alone. One of the nice things about the Mom Show and Cityline, I don't remember how many viewers Cityline had, but it had hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here in my office, and I can help, more or less one person at a time. Talking to you,
right,
when I was on TV, you're helping hundreds of thousands at a time. So if what comes out of this is, and what the feedback I got a lot from I got from a lot of moms in the day was, you know what? I never had anybody to talk to me to tell me that I wasn't the only person going through what I'm going through right now.
Right.
And the sense that you're part of something bigger can give people a lot of sense of comfort.
Yes.
So that's something that would be really great if it comes out of this. That's for sure.
Well, it already is, because we are providing hope, because, like you made mention, when you're in it, when you're in the moment and the anxiety and the stress and everything, you don't have the thought to say someone else is going through this. You feel as though you're confided, you're the only one going through it. So to your point, that's amazing.
And I got a lot of people that say to me things like, well, I shouldn't really complain because, a lot of people have it worse than me. And I said, there's a famous saying, that I felt bad about having no shoes until I saw a guy with no feet.
Right.
Except here's the thing.
Yeah.
I take no pleasure in the fact that the guy's got no feet.
No.
And I've still got no shoes.
Right.
So that hasn't really helped me. But the idea so when people start to say to me things like, well, other people have it worse. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? All that matters is, what are you going through right now? And what can we do to try and make it better? And sometimes the only thing we can do to make it better is say, you know what? This is going to be okay. It is really hard right now, but hang in, hang tough, do what you're doing, maybe tweak this a little bit and that, but it is going to get better. And I think when you tell people that, it does give them a sense of comfort knowing they're part of something and that there's hope, because hope is what we got. And we need as much of that as we can possibly get.
So the official takeaway from this wonderful conversation, Dr. Dave, is that the E.R.S.I Brain Project is literally providing hope.
Correct.
Gorgeous. So I want to thank you, Dr. Dave, for taking a moment. And for those who have yet to figure out, please log on to ersibrainproject.org for more information, more services. Dr. Dave, I'm going to ask to have you find some time in your schedule to come back and talk to the audience. You're a plethora of information.
You just say jump, I'll say hi, baby. You got nothing to worry about. Just anytime, I'm always available for this, because it's really, really, really meaningful to me as well.
Yeah, it is. And, if there are 3 takeaways that you would want to mention to our listeners, to our watchers, could you just let us know what are a few takeaways? Yes, we're providing hope. Is there anything else that you want to let the audience know?
You're not alone, right? Is really important. Take a step back every once in a while and look at the whole situation and think to yourself, what can I do, even if it's just a little tweak? What can I do? Can I sleep better? Can I eat better? Can I exercise a little more? Can I watch my alcohol intake? Can I stop smoking? I got to tell you something, Coach. I have never, ever once done a television or any sort of event where I haven't told people to stop smoking. So stop smoking.
Right.
And but just like do your best with what you got right now. Hang on and have hope, because there's definitely what to be hopeful about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dave, for those takeaways. And like I made mention earlier, we are, with Heaven's Hope, having you back as another special guest, maybe even like as a special guest who is involved in the conversation with another guest, because that would be an awesome moment.
I'd love to. I'll put it this way. I'd love to hear somebody else talk a little bit. So there you go. That would be great.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. For all of those who are
It's a
listening and
pleasure.
tuning in, please make sure to check out ersibrainproject.org for more information. Our next conversation is going to be with an individual who is a retired police officer. So we're going to really find out about the stress and anxiety and how the ERSI Brain Project is able to help and provide services to, again, allow them to come back to their happy place. Thanks for tuning in. This is Coach Single. We'll be listening next time. Bye for now.